I prefer liberty with danger than peace with slavery. Man is born free, and everywhere he is in chains. The world of reality has its limits, the world of imagination is boundless. The first man who, having enclosed a piece of ground, bethought himself of saying "this is mine," and found people simple enough to believe him, was the real founder of civil society. From how many crimes, wars and murders, from how many horrors and misfortunes might not anyone have saved mankind, by pulling up the stakes, or filling up the ditch, and crying to his fellows, "Beware of listening to this impostor, you are undone if you once forget that the fruits of the earth belong to us all, and the earth itself to nobody." I know the feelings of my heart, and I know men. I am not made like any of those I have seen. I venture to believe that I am not made like any of those who are in existence. If I am not better, at least I am different. Whether nature has acted rightly or wrongly in destroying the mold in which she cast me, can only be decided after I have been read. I would rather be a man of paradoxes than a man of prejudices. It is too difficult to think nobly when one thinks only of earning a living. To be sane in a world of madmen is in itself madness. What wisdom can you find greater than kindness? Why should we build our happiness on the opinions of others, when we can find it in our own hearts? Every person has a right to risk their own life for the preservation of it. To write a good love letter, you ought to begin without knowing what you mean to say, and to finish without knowing what you have written. Or, rather, let us be more simple and less vain. Those that are most slow in making a promise are the most faithful in the performance of it. Civilization is a hopeless race to discover remedies for the evils it produces. Man was born free, and he is everywhere in chains. Those who think themselves the masters of others are indeed greater slaves than they. Every man having been born free and master of himself, no one else may under any pretext whatever subject him without his consent. To assert that the son of a slave is born a slave is to assert that he is not born a man. All my misfortunes come of having thought too well of my fellows. I have never thought, for my part, that man's freedom consists in his being able to do whatever he wills, but that he should not, by any human power, be forced to do what is against his will. I perceive God everywhere in his works. I sense him in me, I see him all around me. Everything is good as it comes from the hands of the Maker of the world, but degenerates once it gets into the hands of man. In respect of riches, no citizen shall ever be wealthy enough to buy another, and none poor enough to be forced to sell himself. In truth, laws are always useful to those with possessions and harmful to those who have nothing, from which it follows that the social state is advantageous to men only when all possess something and none has too much. There are times when I am so unlike myself that I might be taken for someone else of an entirely opposite character. I hate books, they only teach us to talk about things we know nothing about. Trust your heart rather than your head. To live is not to breathe but to act. It is to make use of our organs, our senses, our faculties, of all the parts of ourselves which give us the sentiment of our existence. The man who has lived the most is not he who has counted the most years but he who has most felt life. The truth brings no man a fortune. As soon as any man says of the affairs of the state, "What does it matter to me?" the state may be given up for lost. In any case, frequent punishments are a sign of weakness or slackness in the government. There is no man so bad that he cannot be made good for something. No man should be put to death, even as an example, if he can be left to live without danger to society. There is nothing better than the encouragement of a good friend. It is as if my heart and my brain did not belong to the same person. Feelings come quicker than lightning and fill my soul, but they bring me no illumination, they burn me and dazzle me. We must powder our wigs, that is why so many poor people have no bread. Love, known to the person by whom it is inspired, becomes more bearable. Once you teach people to say what they do not understand, it is easy enough to get them to say anything you like. It is easier to conquer than to administer. With enough leverage, a finger could overturn the world, but to support the world, one must have the shoulders of Hercules. The only moral lesson which is suited for a child, the most important lesson for every time of life, is this: never hurt anybody. The words slavery and right are contradictory, they cancel each other out. Whether as between one man and another, or between one man and a whole people, it would always be absurd to say, "I hereby make a covenant with you which is wholly at your expense and wholly to my advantage. I will respect it so long as I please and you shall respect it as long as I wish." Absolute silence leads to sadness. It is the image of death. All wickedness comes from weakness. The child is wicked only because he is weak. Make him strong, he will be good. He who could do everything would never do harm. In all the ills that befall us, we are more concerned by the intention than the result. A tile that falls off a roof may injure us more seriously, but it will not wound us so deeply as a stone thrown deliberately by a malevolent hand. The blow may miss, but the intention always strikes home. In a well-governed state, there are few punishments, not because there are many pardons, but because criminals are rare. It is when the state is indicate that the multitude of crimes is a guarantee of impunity. She was dull, unattractive, couldn't tell the time, count money or tie her own shoelaces. But I loved her. Falsehood has an infinity of combinations, but truth has only one mode of being. A born king is a very rare being. The people of England regards itself as free, but it is grossly mistaken. It is free only during the election of members of Parliament. As soon as they are elected, slavery overtakes it, and it is nothing. If we assume man has been corrupted by an artificial civilization, what is the natural state? the state of nature from which he has been removed? Imagine, wandering up and down the forest without industry, without speech, and without home. If there were a nation of gods, it would govern itself democratically. A government so perfect is not suited to men,